And I think I've given everybody sufficient time. So thank you all for joining us for this meeting. I'm going to give you a little run through before we begin. Sorry, connection dipped for a bit there. So as you all know, last week, has it been a week already? We had I'd say probably the biggest hackathon that Jamaica has had in quite some time now. That was the Intellibus hackathon, which was hosted by Intellibus. I've heard a lot of good things about the hackathon, some of the participants, right? And in our community, I noticed that a lot of persons had a lot of feedback. They were saying, okay, they like this about the hackathon, they talk about the persons that they network with, good experiences and so forth. So it dawned on me as one of the executives of the community to say, hey, we should try and get Sir Wattal to, be available for a session where he could talk with members of the community, also share the story of Intellibus, because I know some of you in here plan to become entrepreneurs yourself, right? So just to let you know, we're going to use the raise hand feature, or if you're kind of shy like myself, you can just leave a comment in the chat. All right. So, Sir Otto, you can still unmute, right? If not, you can. Okay, that's great. So you could start us off with, I just like to know the story of Intellibus, how you started, how the company got to where it is now, and then how you ended up in little old Jamaica. All right.
That's a great question. Yeah, so for some of us who may already have seen the website and looked at our YouTube, um, just just search for Intellibus YouTube and you'll find it. You may have noticed that there's a lot of association with NYU, and that sort of goes back to the genesis of the company. Before there was a company, there was an idea, and the idea was to make less software, as in there's too much software in the world, there's too much data in the world. And I was a engineer myself. I was a banker turned self-taught programmer and a software engineer. And I learned software engineering myself. I did go to school and did programming back in the school days in my early work, wherever I was, even in banking, I would try to automate everything, writing code. And uh, and then I did startups when I left my banking career. And as a result of that, I ended up uh, in a situation where the startup didn't really work. And I talked briefly about this during the hackathon. And so I wrote a book on cloud, and that led me to teach at NYU. And so really, you could argue that Intellibus started out of NYU, while it's not, NYU is not an investor or anything. They're an educational institution. But I was teaching cloud. I set up the first cloud computing course at NYU. I was very fortunate to do that. And back then, we're talking, 2013, even earlier, where cloud was not, I think, 2011 and 12 even, 2012. Back then, cloud was not as popular a thing. AWS was barely coming up with their services. There were no Lambdas, for example, in AWS. And at that time, when I was teaching cloud, I obviously had spent my time on Wall Street, so a lot of people wanted me to come and advise them. So I became the advisor to the board members at Fannie Mae, which is one of the largest financial institutions in the US, and several other people, having worked in the banking sector. So, and my background in technology really started there. And as I did a lot of advisory work over the years, it led to the formation of a company, leading to me hiring a lot of other smart engineers to solve real problems. Because a lot of times you can give advice to people, but people don't act on your advice correctly, or they do different things. They don't fully understand the advice. So that's why, as Intellibus, we started to bring in engineers to solve real world problems. And that led to a broader discovery of what problems we were solving. So that's how really we started.
Wow, that's I think there's so much. I have so many questions based on what you just said. You seem like one of those person that has a breadth, a wide breadth of knowledge, and you just decided to go into entrepreneurship because of an issue you saw, right?
Yeah, really. I mean, the issue was there's just I call it broken experiences. We live in a world of broken experiences, and there's broken experiences are caused by the fact that everyone is trying to solve a problem, and we all want to solve the problem today, which is a great thing. But every time you
Mhm.
solve a problem, you actually create four more problems for everybody, and that's the world we live in. And some people solve problems really well. WhatsApp is a great example. Zoom is a great example. It is not as broken experience that used to be there before. You can use there's everybody in the world is heavily using Zoom, and you can imagine in this industry you would argue that there should be 15 products or at least five or at least three. But Zoom's done a great job of solving the problem of broken experiences. Think of the fact that no matter what operating system, what browser you launch it from, wherever you try to use it from, by and large it works. Of course, during COVID, it became pretty problematic for people to use it, and some broken experiences were created even in the Zoom platform, and it's not as stable as it used to be. But really, when someone does a great job of building a great product, then it eliminates that broken experience. And I think that's foundationally the problem that we still try to solve. You use the word broken experience or multiplicity, which is more a sort of a technical word, if you will, for the same problem.
Mm. But as we solve problems and apps like Zoom rise, you'd say that all the apps like Skype would die out as well.
Yeah, and lot of products, as you can see, think of the instant messaging space itself. Since you mentioned, I believe you mentioned Skype. Did I get that right?
Yeah, Skype.
Yeah. So think of Skype itself. Before Skype was not the first messaging tool out there. Before Skype, there was something called Yahoo Messenger, and you would argue that big company back then, Yahoo was the biggest search engine. Google didn't exist, and one would argue that hey, in the world of Yahoo, how would you want to compete with Yahoo? Nobody would, because they were the biggest tech company out there. It'd be impossible to compete. And Yahoo had Yahoo Messenger, and Yahoo Messenger had the voice capability in it. Except, what did Skype do? They switched the default. I don't know how many of us were, back then. Most of the people on the call probably weren't there in the early days of Skype. And the early days of Skype were the default had been switched. For example, when you click on the button in Yahoo Chat, it just launched the chat window and you had to type. The voice wasn't the default. And what did the Skype guys do? They created a product where the voice was the default. So sometimes a new product doesn't have to be a new product, it's just a new experience. And the new experience is not really a new piece of functionality, it's just a new sequence. So you change the sequence in which the things work, and that itself can create market and opportunity. And then, of course, they did a great job of distributing their product. They found a niche. They found that sellers on eBay. eBay was a big thing back then. I think probably a lot of people still use it, and it became an opportunity for people to who were eBay sellers and buyers. They were usually very distributed, fragmented all over the world. People could buy and sell from anywhere in the world on eBay, and the community had no space to collaborate or communicate with each other. And so Skype became a way for people to talk to each other within that eBay community. That was one of the drivers. I'm sure there were several others like that, and it led to wide adoption of a very sticky community, and that led to many other things. Eventually, I believe, they got bought or sold out. And again, later, Skype is still there as a company, as a product. I believe it's owned by Microsoft now. And there's several other products that have emerged. You can think of WhatsApp. Even when WhatsApp came out, there was WhatsApp, Viber, several other products, but not many lasted. I believe WhatsApp, WeChat, a handful of them have lasted.
All right, people. I hope you're taking notes now because Sir Wattel said something really important, right? Sometimes you can enter a market and just have a creative spin, or you focus on something else, like sound, for example. I remember during the pandemic, Clubhouse had, kind of skyrocketed. I think it kind of declined after all, but still, they did have their time in the sun. Okay, let's focus on Intellibus for a bit. How did you end up arriving here in Jamaica and saying, okay, we're gonna do this AI hackathon?
So interesting question again. The reason we came to Jamaica was actually a series of things that happened much before that. Uh, uh, Graham Thompson, who some of you may have seen during the hackathon or met him, he and I were traveling the entire Caribbean. In fact, we've been traveling all over the world on as part of a not-for-profit effort, which is called World Digital Governance, WDG. I can post the link. I don't know if posting in the chat is allowed. I can post the link here
Yes,
for
it's
everybody.
allowed. It's
Yeah,
allowed,
so
yes.
I'll post the link and people can look at this link. It's called public.wdg.org. Uh, it's essentially an effort around world digital governance. And I'll also post a video that we did. This is just a presentation that uh, we gave back in January at the UN on this topic. So you can see the awareness and importance of that topic. I was giving a talk in February to about, I think, easily close to about 500 people in from about 40 plus countries. I believe 48 countries were represented across developing nations on this topic of digital freedom. Um, Today, your data, your AI agent, and your virtual assets are not actually controlled by you. You kind of are supposed to own them, but you don't actually own them. And owning your own data is like owning your own clothes. And you don't actually own them because you keep them in these different websites. You go sign up on a site and you put some information, you fill in a form, or you go to an app that you use and you post your videos and photos. And so your information gets fragmented and distributed, and your data is all over. And there is no mechanism for you to take back control of that data, as in for you to have the ultimate right on who gets access to that data. You could argue that yes, for someone to take all your data, they would have to log into 15 services and hack everything. So it's not easy for someone to take it away. But nobody needs to hack it because these companies where you store your data anonymize that data or take that data and give it away to advertisers or whoever else they have to anyway. They don't do it directly, they do it indirectly, but it's done. So you don't truly control who gets access to your data. And that's why when you have a conversation on WhatsApp, suddenly you can see an ad on some other channel. And building awareness around that effort on the challenge on what is called digital slavery and finding digital freedom for people is something I deeply care about. And it's foundationally the same problem of broken experience because the digital you is broken and it's fragmented and it's out there. It's every form you ever filled online. It's every post that you made ever online, and it's it's also got an allied problem that you don't own the digital you, the half-life problem. I believe every human being is living only half their potential. What does that mean? It means that imagine if you have 6 social media accounts, you take the same photo, you post it in 6 places. Guess what? It's the same people on the other side. They're consuming 6 times. It's just wasteful. That's pretty simple. And you don't have to be a genius to understand that you're actually wasting time by posting the same thing in 6 places so you can consume it from 6 places. So that is broken experience and it is the half-life problem because if you do that, you live only half your life or 1/6 of your life. So somehow we believe that that's the way it works, but there has got to be a better way. That's our hypothesis. And that's the World Digital Governance effort to not only solve the digital you problem, you don't own yourself, but also solve the problem of the half-life. So you don't repeat yourself in 15 places redundantly. But most importantly, helping everybody find their purpose. I believe most people that I've worked on Wall Street, and even I left my job to become an entrepreneur because the job didn't excite me anymore. And people work in a job. A lot of people you'll go, maybe not your parents, but you ask people and say, hey, are you happy in your job? And most people will tell you they're not happy in their jobs, but they still work anyway because they have to pay their bills. And so we aren't really even in our right jobs. So we don't control ourselves. We're living only half our potential and we are not even in the right job. So what are we doing? That's a question every human must wake up every morning and ask themselves. And that's our mission. That's what I care about deeply. And that's why I'm going all over the world. Jamaica just happened to be the place which I landed on after surveying the whole Caribbean. It was quite by serendipity, I found out that this is the only country, which has maybe one of the only countries, I haven't looked at every country's law, that has passed a law where owning your data is a fundamental human right. Most countries don't have that law. Most countries have a law which says that you have the right to information, RTI, even in India. What does that mean? That if you need data from the government will give you the data. Doesn't mean that you own it. So that's a problem globally. And Jamaica just happens to be the country which has this. Also, I was here in January in Jamaica because I was invited by the Jamaica Stock Exchange to come and talk about impact of AI on jobs. And that was an interesting conversation. We can talk about it. But that led me to meet a lot of very smart people. I always wondered, I knew about Usain Bolt and Jamaica for a long time, and I always used to wonder, how come on a small island, small, I don't mean disrespectfully, I mean like it's relatively small compared to
We
Australia.
understand.
Yeah, from a small island, how can a person come and be the fastest man on earth? Like, what is this island made of? Only magic can answer that question, right? Or biology that is beyond understanding. So for me, that was the biggest revelation when I came here and I met the people and I saw the culture. The conference, the stock exchange started with a pastor coming on and reading a sermon. I thought, okay, people are very religious, but then I realized that people actually have faith in this country, and you can move mountains with faith. I don't have to tell you that. So I think that's what has kept me here. What brought me here was the WDG discovery, but what has kept me here is finding the faith here in the people and how much they deeply care about the community, and I care a lot about community.
Wow, this is really interesting. I came here expecting to hear about tech, but your life mission seems like a greater purpose that you've dedicated yourself to.
Yeah, I mean, technology and tools, will come and go. Tools, humans create tools for efficiency, for saving their time, to make their life better, to make their life simpler, and the tools will come and go. 5 years ago, nobody talked about AI. Uh, 15 years ago, nobody talked about the cloud. I'm sure there'll be something beyond AI we'll all talk about. We just don't know what it'll be called yet. And
Mm.
people talk about AGI, but I don't believe AGI is happening for the next 20 years. I believe we'll see a very different fork in the future. So I'm a little bit of a contrarian thinker, but I do believe that I do see humanity elevating its potential. I do see humans maximizing their potential in my head.
All right. Wow. All right. So I do want to give the attendees a chance to ask you a question. So also I'll do have some questions here before I know that some persons want to. So if there's anybody in here who has a question for Mr. Wattal, you can raise your hand or you can post a question in the chat. Also, we're also looking for feedback. So if you had feedback on the hackathon itself, right, you can let us know. All right, I'm not seeing any raised hands so far. So I'm gonna go ahead with some questions I saw before. Okay. Oh, here they are. So, question number one. One second, the computer is giving some trouble. Okay, do you have a favorite project from the hackathon?
Do I have a favorite project from the hackathon? I have to tell you, it's like asking somebody if you have 10 kids, which is your favorite kid. You know, all the projects were amazing. That's all I have to say. And I don't mean this lightly. I mean, to the extent that the projects that didn't even make the finalists, when people met me outside, there was this people who had built a simple button, a red button, you press the button and an emergency call goes. I mean, that's what I like. I like when people think like that. And it was so good to see the entrepreneurial spirit on everybody. So with all due respect and the best of the love in my heart, I feel anyone who participated in the hackathon is a winner. And I believe every project deserves a win. It's just that, when there are judges and they're scoring, they have to rank it. They have to give somebody the prize. They have to do their thing. But I believe everybody put in their spirit, even the people who at some point felt that they couldn't make it, and some of the people left and towards the end because it was quite late. People were working for 30 hours or more. So I understand
Yeah.
that, but I think it was mind blowing from my perspective. I wasn't expecting it. The level of outcome I saw, the people I saw, hats off to every single participant.
All right, I'm seeing a question in the chat. How long did it take Intellibus to be profitable?
We were profitable from day one because I was one person and I was getting paid more than what I needed to pay my bills. You could argue from the first day we were profitable, but not to say that we didn't face our challenges as we grew the business. We were in very challenging times as we have grown the business multiple times. Businesses go up and down, but that's just the nature of business, right? And if you think that the motive of a business is to make profit, or make revenue, then we're kind of looking at only half the picture. The motive of a business is to solve problems and make an impact. And revenue and profit is always a lagging indicator. It follows. If you're seeing profit, that means you got a revenue sometime back. If you got revenue, that means you solved a real problem sometime back. So I encourage entrepreneurs to think in that lens. Think of the real problem you're solving. Think of how quickly and efficiently you can solve the problem. And think of how many people have this problem so you can create the biggest possible impact. And if you do that, then the revenue profit is all just going to magically happen. You won't even know how it's coming.
All right. I think you somewhat answered this question. It says, how do you feel about the hackathon event? Did it meet your expectations?
Yeah, it exceeded my expectations in all means. We were expecting, we had officially put the goal of 500. When we are communicating to the media, internally we had set a goal with the team for 600. We ended at 645 participants. So I think that was definitely above our expectations.
Okay. Next question here. Oh, what advice would you give to somebody who wants to become a better developer?
So I think better developer, the couple of foundational things. To be a better developer, obviously, trying to just personal development, personal growth, because better developer is about pursuing engineering excellence. And excellence comes only if you are really striving for it, as in not just excellence in what you do as even as a human. You have to improve yourself. So I think foundationally, just aiming to be a better human is the first step. Even before you think of what software tool or what programming language to learn, you can't really be a better developer, because there'll always be a better developer who knows everything you know, but they're just a better human, and people will want to work from them or use their products. So aiming to be a better human, and that's a big part of the AI Academy that we are launching, is training people or teaching people how to be a better human in the world of AI, which is even going to be more complex because there is a lot of ethical issues around AI. So just learn how to be a better human first, right? Care for people, be nice and kind to people, understand yourself first, and see what your core values are, and then stick to those values and principles. So that's the first step. And then the second step is how to be great in the field of software, which is how to write better software. So very finitely focus on the problem. And then it just goes back to what kind of software engineer do you want to be? Do you want to be the engineer that pushes the boundaries of software as a technology, like AI, for example? Or do you want to be the engineer who wants to actually solve real world problems? And so it's really first that fork. The first is be a better human. Second is take that fork in the road to understand which kind of engineer you want to be. And the world needs both kind of engineers. We need more of the problem solving engineers than the research scientist engineers, as in who are pushing the boundaries, coming up with new model architecture and novel ways of technology. So both fields exist, but see where your passion lies. The world obviously needs more problem solvers, and then identify the problem, and then think of how can you write more code in less amount of time. As in, I say more code is not always better code. It's better quality code, and in the fastest time possible. So velocity is important. Work balance is important, meaning how quickly can you do it, how well can you do it, and then most importantly, how you automate what you do. So obviously using AI tools today like Cursor, Copilot, whatever tools you have is important, but ensuring that you have the right workflow as a developer setup, the right machine. I mean, I think every software engineer, I would encourage them to use a Macintosh, not a Windows machine. If you're a software engineer using a Windows machine, it's like trying to use the wrong tools in the first place to be a great software engineer. If you want to be a great software engineer, invest in yourself, invest in buying a Mac. People who come to the academy, we will definitely encourage them to do that. If you are getting a scholarship, potentially we will get you that. So that's definitely, I would encourage that. And then use tools like Nix and others to set up your developer environment really well, managing managing your physical environment because people lose a lot of time. Then get beyond being an I-shaped engineer, meaning just learning about the language. Learn about all the stuff that you need to be good at. For example, and we did workshops on this during the hackathon. Learning the right code is great, but learning what problem you're solving, broken experience, then learning how to debug, that's an art, it's a skill. I was a software engineer myself for a long time, and at some point I got very frustrated because I would sometimes miss out a comma or a punctuation within the or a syntax within a line of code, and I would spend hours trying to find the problem. It was very frustrating for me as an engineer, and you lose 4 hours, and it was a very silly bug. So like learning when to code, how to code is good, but learning how to debug more effectively. Now, back then we didn't have as many tools. Now we have so many tools, so those issues don't happen as much. But even then, uh, you then learn how to deploy your code. A lot of people don't know still how to deploy code efficiently and don't have a good workflow around it, automated workflow. And then, of course, learning how to demo. And demo is not so much about presentation skills. It's about ensuring that the code is deployed in the right place in the right way. A lot of times people will tell me, oh, yeah, I wrote the code really well. It works on my machine. And then they'll send to a user. User will say it's not working on their machine. And if that's what's happening to your code, that's a good benchmark for you to know that you haven't achieved engineering excellence. If you have become excellent, that means you can write code quickly. If the user asks you to make a change, you can change it quickly. You've written it in a configurable way. You're able to push it and deploy it in a few clicks without a lot of effort. And then the user who receives it can use it without a hitch. And if you're able to do this end to end, then you're already on your path to greatness in engineering excellence or software engineering.
Mr. Water, I gotta say, when you said that as a developer, we have to use a Mac, it triggered a fight syndrome in me a while ago. As I'm pro Windows, but we're gonna overlook that. Um, I see a question here in the chat. Can you describe the type of engineering talent
So,
Intellibus?
so I have to
Uh,
say I am still pro VS Code, just not Windows. So
I'm gonna move past. Can you describe the type of engineering talent Intellibus currently has?
the kind of talent Intellibus currently has, we have primarily software, so three kinds of people: software engineers, founders, and educators. So engineers are people who like to build software. Uh, Founders, so to speak, people who have built software companies and sold them before. Entrepreneurs like myself, they are there in the company, several of them. Uh, and then, of course, we have educators in the company, people who have built several companies and sold several companies, not just one. They are in the educator bucket who are there to advise us, guide us. Some of them are board advisors. Some of them are, part of the company. They work with our customers very closely, and they are educators. They also associate themselves with universities and take courses and teach and train. And some of them are PhDs and they've written books. So those are the three kinds of people: educators, founders, and then engineers. And then, of course, we have all kinds of engineers but primarily we are a very, as I mentioned, shop that is driven by a very sort of open tech stack, if you will. So open tech stack implies Java, JavaScript, AWS is just a cloud, but it's not. It's just like a cloud. It's just a way of deploying and delivering software, so to speak. But it's really Java, JavaScript, Kafka, Spring, Postgres, Terraform, Chef. That open ecosystem is what we primarily use as our tech stack.
All right, that's interesting. Let me see. The next question was, is Intellibus looking to establish a branch in Jamaica? And if so, what are the expected timelines?
So we are setting up our AI Academy here. I wouldn't necessarily call it a branch as in like for Intellibus, the company, but Academy is part of Intellibus, group of companies. We have investments in several other startups as well. So Intellibus is going to have its presence through its academy here. Intellibus will hire people here for the consulting side of the house, or even for our product R&D, which will be sitting inside the academy, using the academy more as a co-working space. So we will have presence in that regard within Jamaica. We're not setting up a legal entity right now, so we're not going through that. We'll still operate as a US company here. So you could call it a branch in that sense, except that it will be the academy that will operate here. And that's probably going to be a physical space very soon. We are working through. So anyone on this call knows of a building that looks like the AC Hotel in Kingston, which has 15-foot ceiling and glass windows. Please point us to that because we're actively looking at options.
Oh, you said you're looking for an office?
For a space for the academy. We're looking for about 10 to 20,000 square feet space, and like a modern facility which is designed very similar to what we would have in the US as our academy space.
Okay, I'll make a note of that for the academy. Oh, by the way, on the topic of the academy, could you tell us, sure, I saw somebody ask this, right? What are the requirements for the academy? How can we get scholarships for the academy and so forth?
Sorry, what's the question? The
Oh,
requirements.
yeah, so how does one join the academy? How does one possibly get a scholarship and just general information around the academy itself?
So you can join the academy by applying to the academy outside of right now because we don't have a physical location. You can't walk up there and ask for application. But once we physically set up the academy, we will allow anyone to just walk up to the academy and sign an application. We don't have an academy specific website. We only set up the Hackathon website. We will be launching an academy website. Potentially at some point, we will open admissions there. Right now, uh, there's no open admission. Right now, the only admission to the academy is through the hackathon that we did. And from the hackathon, we have identified uh, about 60 people for the academy. The first 20 have already been given, actually 80 people. The first 20 have been given scholarships, and the remaining 60 have been put in future cohorts. So they are sort of the wait list for the academy. Uh, if any of the first 20 people don't join for any reason, then those scholarships will be awarded to the one of the remaining 60 people. And then the remaining 60 people, they will be eligible for scholarships, not probably not all of them, some of them, but that determination will make sometime in July.
All right, that's good to hear. Next question. AI is reshaping the way we work. How do you see AI being leveraged by developers to enhance the productivity, creativity, and problem solving?
Yeah, so yes, AI is definitely reshaping how we see creativity and problem solving. So take an example. Back in the day, you needed Figma to do design, right? The entire WDG website that you saw, there was no Figma used for any other design. It was just directly done with code and using AI to generate it. So we live in a world now, of course, it uses ChatCN. There's only certain kind of design possibilities. You can't be very drastically different from the underlying frameworks or components that are used for generation. But again, if you wanted to do it a little slower and you wanted to kind of hand code it using AI, so to speak, you could do it. It's just a question of setting up the right workflow. Uh, and yes, you could do that. Of course, there are tools that will allow you to accelerate design within Figma using AI. So there's plenty of options out there, but it's still the creative expression that still lies upon the individual. So having the eye for creative design is important. Knowing what good looks like, for example, and both from a design perspective as well as from a functional perspective. For example, are you meeting the accessibility requirements? What choice of colors are you making in design? That's just basic creativity around an interface or an experience. The same goes for enhancing your own productivity as a developer, setting up the right workflow, using the right tools. The challenge almost always is how do you know that the code that AI is generating is good enough? So it still requires for you to have the in-depth knowledge of the code and how you're using it. Otherwise, you're just copying and pasting stuff till it somehow works. And so that's that double-edged sword there. If you begin to leverage AI without fully understanding what the code does, then that may not make you an excellent engineer.
All right. Let's
Yeah,
see.
there Yeah,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Yeah. No, no, I'm saying that there's some other points people are making, not to beat upon the Mac and Windows, but I think my comment came across pretty strong. I do like Microsoft; they are our partners, so I'm not trying to put them down. I just want to be very clear, and especially since this is recorded, and yes, absolutely, the tool is the tool, right, and the person is the person. So it's really what, yeah, I'm sure there's a person who can use Windows and write better code than a person using a Mac. There's no question. I was talking more from personal experience on what has worked for me. I was a Windows user for 20 plus years. I used to even, beyond coding, use PowerPoint quite a lot. And I was a BlackBerry user for a long time. And there were some hard switches I made in my life from BlackBerry to iPhone. It was probably an impossible choice for me because I was so used to the haptic feedback that the buttons gave. And the same goes for Windows. It was a terrible switch for me to go from PowerPoint to Google Slides. I'm not giving a coding example intentionally, but those are hard switches you make as a developer, and things work for certain people in certain contexts. The reason I switched from PowerPoint to Google Slides was more because of real-time collaboration, and the Windows ecosystem didn't offer me that freely, and it locked me into a certain environment. So people have their reasons. And yes, if you're using a very powerful gaming laptop, absolutely you could do that. Like you don't have to use a Mac. The point I was making is that Mac provides a lot degree of continuity. I'm a Mac ecosystem user, so I use an iPhone, I use a Mac. For me, it's just convenience. Maybe for someone else, it's not. For example, we're launching the Screen app here. We're going to launch it for the iOS first and potentially Android next. It's just preference, really. And we are strongly preferred in that direction. That's all.
All right, Mr. Water, just so you know, we're a very fun group. We might throw one punch here and there, but it's all fun, right?
It's all good.
All right, let me see. Oh, yes, Tiffany Tomlin. Also, as someone well versed in AI, what advice would you give to someone looking to take an unconventional path toward becoming a developer? Tiffany, could you expound on this a bit? Do you understand her question?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand the question. I think we're saying for someone well versed in AI, right? I mean, I think you're talking about me, right? What advice would you give to someone looking to take an unconventional path to become a developer? So I think maybe the question, the way I'm reading it is that you are not a software developer today and you want to become a developer, or is the question more, what is the way to become? I think the way to become a great developer, software engineering excellence, we talked about it. There's a question if you're a non-developer or non-engineer, how do you do it? I think AI provides you that possibility, but there is no substitute to knowing the foundations. Uh, for example, in Intellibus, when people come in, we give them this 9-point learning framework for learning any software. And we say start with the foundation. And what is the foundation? The foundation is before you learn about any software, you have to think of what are the basics. Basics is why was this software invented in the first place? What problem was someone trying to solve? Even before you learn how the software works or how the libraries work and all the other detail. And that is purpose. And for example, Java, why did somebody invent Java? They invented Java because they didn't want to write the C code to run in 7 different operating systems or 3 different operating systems back then, 3 times. So someone created an abstraction layer called the JVM, and that was step one. That's what Java came with. And that transformed programming to a significant degree. You had to write code once in Java, it ran on a JVM. JVM could be run on any OS. You don't have to write OS specific code anymore. So understanding purpose is the first step. If you want to be an unconventional developer, that's perfectly fine. But understand the purpose. Then the uses. What do you use this for? Versions. A lot of people don't know that what was the version. So one of the things that I always ask when a person comes in an interview, they say, I know Spring. I'll be like, okay, what version of Spring did you work on? And then the moment they tell me the version, that means they're at least they know what version they're working on. Then you ask them, okay, what was the previous version? What's the difference between the two? Now, if you're really a software engineer pursuing excellence, you would know all this. Most people go through their entire careers, don't even ask these questions or don't even realize this because they're just in a job and the job pays a lot of money, so they're doing it. But they aren't actually trying to be an engineer. And that's why I make the difference distinction in my mind when I'm hiring people between a software developer and a software engineer. And I say, if you're a software developer, you're probably, and that's my definition, you're probably someone who's creating software because you want to be in that field for whatever reason, but you're not an engineer because as an engineer, you're striving for excellence. You're trying to learn all this stuff. What is the purpose? What are the uses? What are the versions? What alternatives do I have? What are the limits of this software? What are the edge cases, boundaries? How does this software log stuff? Where do I go and look for the logs? How do I configure it? What are the procedures around it? And most importantly, the thing that we will miss is the internals. What are the internals? It's like knowing everything about the car, but not knowing how the engine works or how the engine connects to the transmission. If you really are a race car driver, you have to know all that to be an excellent race car driver, because otherwise you wouldn't know what's happening with the car. You just know it's making some noise.
All right, people, as I said before, I hope you're taking some notes, and I like that car analogy. So following on what you said, I have a question for you, right? In recent, I'd say the past week or so, I've noticed vibe coding has been trending a lot, right? There's a lot of persons jumping into the field without any fundamentals or understanding of, software development principles, and they're just vibe coding. So what do you think about the vibe coding trend?
So I think some of that has existed for a while, right? It's not new to me. The low code, no code has existed for a while, right? So I think low code, no code was step one, and now there is step two, which has become a little extreme. A lot of low code, no code developers weren't really hardcore software engineers. They were just using low code, no code tools. They could create a website, they could create even a SaaS solution using the tools out there, but they weren't actually engineers. You could argue developers in the PHP world were creating websites and things like that, but they weren't really hardcore engineers. Again, not to say that there weren't some of them, but quite a few of them, they could add a WordPress plugin, but they're a WordPress developer, right? And they could make some changes to CSS, but they weren't like really engineers who know everything about the underlying operating system, or they could rebuild WordPress, using the open source. So really, yes, the democratization with AI is coming. And I think what it is doing is not threatening the jobs of developers, if that's the question, or causing a problem for software engineers. I think that will still stay, but it's empowering people with ideas to give the right direction. For example, one of the biggest problems in software is you give a requirement, and think of if people give requirements, people go build software, then they come back and say, oh, this is not what I want. Imagine how much waste is involved in going and rewriting that software. There's a lot of waste, right? With the rework and recycling. Now, what if the person who had the idea could go to this tool and just give a bunch of prompts and generate what the experience should look like or feel like? Where should the button be, et cetera, et cetera. And then they don't have to spend all the time doing the integration, wiring up, deployment, and all that. They can hand it off to somebody, say, hey, this is what I need it to look like. And usually that iteration was also hard because someone was doing it in Figma and you weren't empowered. So now suddenly that piece, if it's being used by a software engineer who wants to make a career in engineering to write software, yeah, probably not a smart idea. But it's being used by people who are product thinkers or want to create a new experience or want to solve a problem to say, hey, this is what I want the screen to look like. This is what I want the problem, how I want to solve the problem. That's a great idea. So it just depends on who's using it and how they're using it.
Okay. All right. Next question here. I'm seeing, how do you know if you are on the waiting list for the academy?
So currently, if you're in the future cohort, one of the 60 people, then you are in the waiting list because you're in the future cohort. But there is no additional waiting list beyond that. Of course, anyone who ever participated in a hackathon and has met a judge potentially could be called in, because we are going to look at all the other people who were, for example, if you're a finalist, but you didn't actually win a prize, and you didn't get nominated in any of the cohorts, then we'll definitely reach out back to you, because we're going to review all of that. And yeah, so if you haven't heard so far, there is no extra wait list. But if you feel very interested and you want to be part of this, definitely email us. Anvi can give her email here. It's ANWIN@Intellibus. Anvi, if you can post your email, please feel free to email her if you're interested. We'll definitely consider that. And I would highly recommend anybody on this call who is curious, once we launch the academy, to just come to us over the weekend. Like, the academy is from Monday to Friday for the people who are actually paying or who are actually part of the scholarships or the cohort or working with Intellibus. Weekends, some of those people will still be there because they're working on projects. And then we are opening the weekends to any visitors. It could be, people who want to leverage the students and talent in the academy from businesses coming from the US, or people here domestically who are interested in schools or colleges, or who didn't get admission in the academy. So they can just come in and spend their time within the academy. interact with people. Of course, there'll always be limited opportunities because we don't have infinite space. But we want to encourage people to come because we want to sort of build the awareness and share as much as we can by way of our knowledge and experience with people.
All right. Let me see. Doggy Boy, I think he essentially answered your question, right? All right. Akeem McLennan is asking, do any of the Intellibus project teams utilize Spring AI with their stacks or any AI framework like LangChain?
So yeah, I mean, we've used LangChain, definitely, right? Spring AI, I'm not sure if it's being used. I will have to check to what degree, if it is. But yeah, I'm pretty sure, all multiple frameworks are being used. If there's an open framework, we've used it. Are we using it in projects actively? Uh, that depends on, what problem or what tech stack or which client we're solving it for. Are we experimenting with these in the lab? For sure. Are we building, and prototyping within our lab? For sure. To what extent customers are deploying and using it just depends. For example, we've written the MAP framework, the multi-agentic framework for Livestock AI, and that doesn't use either of these.
All right. I'm not sure if he's referring to you or the Jamaican developers community, but he's asking what's the best way to support the movement that you have started here in Jamaica.
So yeah, I think the question being asked is, what's the best way to support the movement? I would say the best way is to help host more events like this. This is a great initiative. I definitely appreciate it. So just build awareness because the more people become aware of the reason and intentions of world digital governance and the problem that we are trying to solve. I think hosting more events. I'm more than happy to come to these events, virtually. If I am not, even if I'm traveling internationally and I'm not in Jamaica, I can always join remotely. I'll do as much as I can, even though I'm still a U.S. citizen. I'm based there. I'll do my best to spend as much time as I can in Jamaica, provided obviously, the government will allow me to stay because normally, there is a limit to how many days you can stay when you come here. So we're working
Yeah.
through all that. But as long as I'm allowed by the government to come here, I will come and spend as much time as I can to do my best.
All right, that's good to know because the community, we host all sorts of events. So if I need to get in touch with you, I think I could just contact Alexia again.
No, certainly yes. Alexia is our community media. So there are two outreaches that we do. One is just to the student community, which is what Anvi helps us with and all our hiring. And then the other is to our media community and for events like this that are hosted. So between Anvi and Alexia, you can reach out. I mean, definitely for any hiring and jobs, you can reach out to Anvi. For any events, you can definitely reach out to Alexia. Between Alexia and Anvi, we'll be able to support you and get whatever you need from our side. And definitely, once the academy is announced, we encourage people to come there and visit there. And yeah, and right now, the biggest support anyone can give is help us find the location. We are actively still looking. I'm going to repeat that again. I think I mentioned before. So yeah, but hopefully we would have all that locked down within the next few weeks, if not sooner.
All right, so I will talk with the other community executives if they might know a location. All right, people, it's been a great session. We're now near the 1 hour mark. So I want to allow any of you, if you have any final questions for Sir Watal, you can drop it in the chat here, or you can raise your hand and I will allow you to unmute. All right, I'm not seeing any raised hands. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. So, Mr. Watal, I'd like to first, thank you for agreeing to this on, actually, I
I,
am seeing, go ahead.
yeah, I believe there are two questions. I can see Aaron Easy and Luigi.
All
Yeah,
right,
please
so
go ahead. Yeah.
hold on, I have to allow them. All right, 1 second, people. So, Aaron, you can go ahead with the question.
Yeah, my first question Ed, is what are the specifications for the building that you're looking for that could kind of help us to guide our search?
Yeah, so see, the thing is, we want to create an experience that feels very relaxed for people, right? Usually, if you're in a building that has a very low ceiling, I've seen it blocks my own thinking, right? I feel more relaxed and I can think better when I'm sitting in a church. So obviously we can't do this in a church, right? But we want to do this in an educational place that feels as peaceful like a church when you come there, right? It has a tall ceiling, right? Not maybe tall ceiling like a church, which is 50 foot, but at least a 15-foot ceiling. That's one thing. Then it needs to feel alive, right? It can be, I mean, I know as developers, we like to be in the dark and, be in our dark rooms, right? And do that and keep dark modes on. I get it, but I think a little bit of light should be there. Like we can have our own space where there is, we can be in our darkness, right? So we can code with focus, but we also need some light. So, if there's like a building with a tall ceiling and at least there is some glass, like if you remember the hackathon space, right? When you entered, there was light, there were glass windows, but then there was a room which was a little darker on the inside and you could work there. So a space like that is kind of ideal. Obviously, we can't run the academy from the Marriott Hotel, but a space like that is ideal. And yeah, 15-foot ceilings and a balance of light and space. And we just need an open, empty space, like much like the hackathon space. We're not looking for anything fancy, like a big hall. And it has to feel a little new and modern. It shouldn't look very old and dingy because then people may not feel like excited and motivated to come there. So just psychologically, it should feel good. Like the idea is when you come there, you should feel like, oh my God, this is so peaceful. This is so awesome. I can be awesome here. Like that feeling should come in everybody's heart when they walk in the building. That's the place we're looking for.
Okay, so it's more like an open setting, like a conference center kind of thing, not so much like an office building.
Exactly, exactly. Like an open, like an open hall, right? Like a big open hall. Just imagine an open hall like the church with no seats in it, except like, desks to code, right? But again, I'm using church as an example just so people can understand the point of the tall ceilings and the peace in the heart and mind that is very essential to doing your best work.
Okay, awesome.
All right, I believe we had one more. Luigi. Luigi, you can unmute and go ahead.
Good afternoon, auditors. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so my question to Edward is, how do you balance your role as a tech entrepreneur with family obligations?
With what obligation? Sorry.
Family obligations like wife, children, etc.
So I don't think you're going to like my answer.
I'm still
So
eager to hear it.
yeah. So I'm divorced right now, so I don't have a wife right now, right? So I have one less, obligation in that regard. I have two children. They're both grown up. The elder one, Anubis, you already met. He's already working here, so he doesn't need so much of my attention. I have a great relationship with him because we're talking all the time. I mean, work, not work, all kinds of stuff, right? And my younger son, lives with his mother, so I obviously don't spend as much time with him. But my family that I spend a lot of time with is people like Graham, who you met, who I love, as much as my own family, and they're with me all the time. So it's always hard to have that work and family life balance if your family doesn't also have the same ambitions as you do and is in the same direction, right? I've always wanted in my life that hey, my sister should also come and work with me and all that, but it doesn't happen. People have their own lives; they go in different directions. Sometimes people have family businesses and family works together. And you see some of the greatest businesses in the world are actually family owned businesses. You think of the Ambanis in India and several others. And not, I mean, and they call it like, for example, the AC hotel is owned by the Stewart family. They're a family. And they own the biggest and fanciest hotel in Jamaica. For historical reasons, maybe they were always wealthy, right? They were born in the riches, maybe, right? But somebody earned it somewhere in their history. So at the end of the day, it really, the work-life balance is really about a group of people, community coming together. And yes, if you have a family member or a relationship where the struggle exists, and I've heard from people about that, and I've been in those situations myself. It's not easy. If you'll ask Mr. Musk, he'll have his own story about it, and he'll tell you that he works 200 hours or 120 hours in a week. So and those are tough, right? But he does still spend time, and you've seen him pictures and videos of him with his kids, right? So again, I know your question is about me, and as I mentioned, I think those are hard things. But if you really enjoy something, then trade-offs just sort of naturally come in your way, and you just have to deal with them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, great
I think it
question.
would be kind of cool if we all did something, maybe got together
Sorry?
as programmers. And I think it would be kind of cool if we all got together as programmers and maybe got something for your birthday, Ed. When is your birthday?
My birthday comes in October. It's quite far away.
Oh dear. October what date?
4th.
Okay, good. Good to know. You hear that, everyone?
Okay. All right. I need to wrap. So, Sir Watal, it has been a great session, right? I think at another time you and I can have a proper Windows versus Mac debate.
I think I'm just saying if I'm coding, I'm doing in Mac, and I don't have a problem with anybody using Windows.
That's cool. That's cool. All right. So I've learned a lot, right? Not just about programming, but some life lessons here, right? And I'm hoping that this session was beneficial to each and every one of you as well. Thank you to Alexia, who you're seeing in the chat, who helped us to organize this in very short period of time, really. So big up Alexia. And I'll definitely be reaching out to Alexia again for, another session with Intellibus and with Mr. Wattal, because we're gonna keep the connection. You can also check out the community. We have our YouTube page, which is, JamDevCo, social media at JamDevCo, right? So follow us on social media and you will be up to date with future events. And I'd just like to thank you all for coming here. And that's it for today's session. Bye-bye.
Thank you again for having me.